All right, so this particular video is on how to do a single resource. We're going to call it pet shelters, and then we're going to add on top of it, we're going to do a nested resource. And if we have time after that, we will move on to actual authentication. So I've got the command to load up a new project called pet shelters. It's going to run through everything. All right, I'm going to cd into pet shelters, open it up in Sublime, and have my 3 separate windows. All right, first things first, I want to create a migration for my actual pet shelters. First things first, so bundle exec, Rails generate migration called create pet shelters. I'll just call this shelters. So it runs, and then I create, a new file is created, createshelters.rb. Now, before we do anything, what does every single pet shelter have?
Yeah.
True, but I'm saying like in terms of the shelter itself.
Oh, cages.
No, I meant like if you had to describe for me a shelter.
It has a roof. A name.
A name. Shelter
Sorry.
name, and string, maybe an address, and a string for a phone number, and then a description. I'm just saying, like, just very basic things. Yes, they do have all of those things, but I'm saying the shelter adjectives to this particular noun. So if all goes well, I'm going to drop the entire database in case that I've done this before. Create an empty one. Migrate it over. And now I want to create a bunch of shelters. So I'm going to jump inside of my seeds file, get rid of all this garbage, require faker at the top, and I'm going to create 2 or 3 shelters. How's that? Maybe we'll create 5 shelters. 5 times 2. Shelter.create, and I'm going to say the shelter name is something, the shelter, the address is something, phone number is going to be something, and then description is going to be something. All right, so let's find some fake data for the shelter name, address, phone number, description. So I go over to the faker gem. I'm going to just fill it out with some garbage. All right, I'm looking for some phone numbers. Okay, so it looks like they have faker phone number. This works for me. I'm okay with this. So I've taken care of the phone number. I want an address. So I'm just going to look through here for address. Faker address. Click on that. Looks like if I just do, I'll just do Faker street address. I could obviously make an entire address, but I won't do that for now. The faker name, maybe we'll jump over to, I don't know, what do you want to use for a name? You can do literally anything that you want.
Simpsons.
Simpsons. I actually think there is a Simpsons one. All right, so we will do, we'll just have a location. All right, and then the description, we will do something fun. We'll have Chuck Norris. All right, and we'll just throw a bunch of facts in there for the description. All right, so I created a new project, created this migration over here, and then I'm going to seed it with a bunch of data 5 times. I'm going to create 5 shelters that look a little something like this. Finally, I'm going to seed. And it says, cannot load such file called faker. I should probably put it inside my gem file if I haven't done so already. Gem faker. Bundle install, and then seed. Uninitialized constant called shelter. That probably makes sense. Once I create this, I also need to create the model that is associated with it. So I'm going to create a new model called shelter.rb. Do class shelter, which is going to inherit from application record. And that should be good. Seed it one more time. Nothing should blow up at this point. And then I'll take a look inside of my database. So if I do shelter.count, I have 5 shelters. So if I do this, take a look at my last shelter that I just built. So I have a shelter, which is Stoner's Palace at this particular address. This is the phone number and the description of the shelter. So again, number 1, create your migration, create your model, create some seed data, and now we're ready to actually start building out this CRUD application. Where are all of my routes? Which file has all of my routes inside of it?
Config.
Config under routes.rb. Now you could write out all of the routes yourself, or you can just do resources, and I believe it's shelters. When I run bundle exec Rails routes, I think, it'll list out all of the routes that are now available to me. I have a get for all the shelters, a new shelter edit, and showing an individual one. So all of these things are here for me. Let's load up my server and watch this blow up. I'm going to go to localhost 3000. There's no route that takes me there, so I'm just going to go to /shelters. All right, and it blows up. So /shelters is something that exists. Again, if you take a look over here, take a look over here. Whenever anybody makes a GET request to /shelters, it takes me to the shelters controller, specifically the index action. But it blows up because there's nothing called shelters controller. Easy enough. Jump back over, go to controllers, create a new file called shelters controller.rb. This is going to be shelters controller, which is going to inherit from application controller. Refresh the page one more time. Something else blows up. It says there is no it's going to say that there's no method called index. Yep, the action index could not be found for shelters controller. It doesn't exist. Fairly simple, def index. Refresh the page, blows up again, says there's no template. There's no template. There's no view for this particular thing. So, fairly simple. Create myself a new folder called shelters. Inside of there, I'm going to create a file called index.html.erb. Split the screen in 2 real quick. I'll just do this way. Now I have a shelters controller and this thing showing up on the right. Just to make sure that we're hitting the right page. Refresh this, and I have the one word boop. But over here, I want to see in each individual shelter, like I want to see all of the shelters. So I'm going to create a quick H1, all pet shelters. I know I need to grab them all from the database, so I'll do @shelters equals shelter all. And I'm going to create, I don't know, probably some sort of like table. I don't know how to do that though. HTML table. I want to say like, you know, name, address, description, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, something like this. I want that. So I'm just going to grab this and shove it in my own stuff. All right, so I believe that each pet shelter, if I'm not mistaken, has a shelter name, an address, phone number, and then a description. At this point, I need to iterate over all of the shelters that I found over here. So I'm going to do @shelters, each do shelter. Close it off. Make sure I have an end. I believe it's, copy this real quick. I believe this will be shelter dot shelter name. Address, phone number, and description. If all goes well, I can refresh this page.
Yeah, I think you're missing a pipe.
Missing a pipe. I'm also missing closing ones for all of these. You're correct. That should do it.
Still missing that pipe, I think.
Oh, you're right. There, that's what I was broken. Okay. Now I can see all of my pet shelters. So each individual one, name's capital city, 806 Connors, and all of the description. So I've got all of them. So I have the ability to see literally every single shelter that I have. So this is the read. I can read each individual, all of them all at one time. Now I'm going to jump into seeing an individual one. So I want to make these all links so I can click on it and then see an individual one. At this particular point, I'm going to use a quick helper called link to. And I'm going to have shelter name, and it's going to direct me to a shelter. This is the power of having those little Rails helpers. I don't have to actually type in href. I just do link to. I know that this thing is the thing that shows up on the page, and this is the direction that it takes me in. Refresh this page, just like that. Shelter /1, shelter /2, 3, 4, and 5. Click on this, blows up. The show action couldn't be found for the shelters controller. Fairly simple. Def show. I'm just do @shelter equals shelter.find params. I think it's saved as ID. And then from there, I'll create a show page that basically says H1, and I'll interpolate @shelter dot shelter name, closing H1, and then I'll say I'll just have like address this, phone number, etc. I'll just have a quick link to go back. Link to back. Go into shelters path. Now if I refresh, you have capital city. Like this is shelter number 1. I can go back to all the shelters. I can click on number 4, which is Cypress Creek, and then there's Cypress Creek as well. Maybe I'll throw in a bit of extra stuff inside of here. Grab all of this. I have a quick name. Address. Phone number. The description. Refresh this page. It's not, sorry. name, Cypress Creek, and all this stuff. So I can view each individual one at this particular point. So again, I can see all of them, and I can see each individual one. So I can read. At this point, I want to have a form on this front page where I can create a new pet shelter. So somewhere on here, I'm just going to have a quick link to, and it'll say create a shelter, and it's going to take me to a specific path. I want to probably the new shelter path. New shelter underscore path. Refresh the page. There's that create a shelter. When I click on this, it blows up. The action new could not be found for shelters controller. Again, if you jump over into shelters controller, it makes sense because there's no method called new. Def new. Refresh the page. It's missing a template at this point. There's no view for it. Simple enough. Right down here, new.html.erb, and that I'm going to create a quick form. Is there one that's nearby? I think it's on this page somewhere. There it is. Create a new pet shelter. It's not going to go to /businesses, but it'll go to /shelters. And I'll have shelter name with name. Address goes to address. Description goes to description. And then I'll add one more called phone number. All right, go back here. It was broken because it was missing a template. Now I have a create a new pet shelter, a shelter name, address, phone number, and description. So whatever, create the business, oops, create business. And that blows up because it says the action create could not be found for shelters controller. Let me change this to create shelters. And it said that there was no method called create. Def create. And we'll put a binding pry at this particular point. Refresh, continue. If all is well, oh, something blows up here. Invalid authenticity token. All right. Looks like I have to skip authentication somewhere. There it is. Skip before filter, verify authenticity token. I'll put this at the very top of this. Try it one more time. Skip before filter, skip before action. All right, refresh one more time. Undefined method pry. Jumping inside the gem file, there's probably no pry inside of here. Gem pry. Build a server, bundle install, start the server again. Refresh the page. And now I think we're stuck inside of our pry session. So we have a few parameters that were passed in the form: the shelter name, the address, the phone number, and the description. So if I type in params, there's shelter name, address, phone number, and description. If I were to try to create a new shelter with these params, it blows up because it says forbidden attributes error. So basically what's happened is that people have figured out how to hack everything. And essentially what you need to do at this point is whitelist your parameters. So it's just on a form, they could easily submit SQL inside of a form, which may drop your database. They may return out all of your usernames and passwords and things of that nature. There was actually one person in the UK who, when he was driving through a toll booth and didn't have the little sticker, they take a picture, right? So he sticks a huge cardboard piece of paper, sticks on the front of his windshield, which basically was a SQL command to delete the entire database. And I kid you not, they took the thing and they deleted the entire database. Like it's easily Googleable. So you need to sanitize the parameters that are coming in so that you protect yourself against things like that.
Anything happen to that guy?
Sure, I'm sure it did. I'm going to create a private method called shelter params. I'm just going to do params.permit. I'm only going to permit certain things to come through. Shelter name, address, phone number, and description. All right, let's exit out of here. Blows up. We'll try it one more time. Create the shelter. Stuck inside of a prize session. I have params over here. If all goes well, I can do shelter.create params. And still, there's still forbidden attributes error. What is wrong with this? Oh, it's not params, it is shelter params. And just like that, because I've only allowed certain things to come in from the parameters, I'm able to create a new shelter, ID number 6. And remember, we only created 5 from before. So I'm going to add that code inside of here. I'm just going to do shelter equals shelter.create with a bang, shelter params. And then after you create it, I'm going to redirect to shelter. If all goes well, I can go back to shelter/new, create a new shelter called pause, somewhere in Lincoln Park, 312-555-66777, and dogs and cats. When I create this shelter, it'll insert into the database, and then you can kind of see there's my 7th thing that I created just now. Pause, somewhere in Lincoln Park, phone number, blah, blah, blah. And I can go back, and it shows up at the bottom. So I'm able to create, and I'm also able to read. At one point, like I know that pause doesn't have a phone number of 312-555-6677, so I want to update it. So on this page, I'm going to create a real quick link that just says edit. So I believe that was the show page. And I'm going to have a link to edit. And if I'm not mistaken, there is an edit shelter path. Okay. Edit shelter path. And it looks like edit shelter path needs an ID. So I need to pass in an ID. So I would say ID is going to be @shelter.id. If all goes well, I can refresh this page. I have it back, and I have an edit. And if you take a look at the bottom left-hand corner, there's /shelters/7/edit. Click this, blows up, unknown action. You could not find it inside of shelters controller. Fairly simple. Tap edit. Refresh the page. Missing template. Right click here, create a new template, edit the html.erb. And since the new and the new and the edit are pretty much the same thing, I'm just going to grab this and put it in here. So I'm going to do edit @shelter.shelter name, which means that inside of my shelters controller, I actually need to find that shelter first. @shelter equals shelter.find params ID. Looks like all these, all I need to do is add a value. Right. If all goes well, I can go to this edit page and everything blows up. Let's see what is going on here. So it fills in a whole bunch of stuff. Let's say name.
You close your ERP.
I did not. Name, address. Try one more time. All right, so we have name, address. I forgot to put the phone numbers in the description. Phone number and description. All right. Name, address, phone number, description. So what is actually Paus's phone number? All right, so it's this. I'm just going to grab that, shove it inside of here, create the shelter, and then it's going to take me to the updated version of it. So we're able to create, read, update, and then finally I just want to delete something. So I'm just going to add an extra button on here to destroy it. And instead of figuring that out, I believe it's already on here. Where's my delete? So put. There it is. Refresh the page. I got a little button down here for delete. When I delete it, the 8th one is gone. But it says the action destroy could not be found in the controller. That's fairly simple. I'm just going to add a def destroy. I'm going to find that shelter based off the parameters that are in the URL. And then I'm going to redirect to the shelters page. Refresh it one more time. It blows up. You can kind of see that pause. Why are there two pauses now? Oh, it's because the update. My mistake. The edit thing here is a post by default. But I need to overwrite that post using this hidden method thing, just right over here. We can change it from post to put. So refresh the page one more time. Let's delete this particular one. Why is this not deleting? Oh, I found it and then did not destroy it. Find dot destroy. Delete. This one goes away. This one I'm going to change the pause's phone number to this one. And there's no route that matches put shelters. Let's see, there is a put shelters. Oh, there's an update that I did not do. Def update. I'm going to find the shelter, and I'm going to update the attributes. Shelter.update attributes with, I think it's called shelter params, and then redirect to that shelter. Go back here, refresh, put the correct phone number in its place. This one blows up. No route matches put shelters. Where is this one actually going? Oops. That would make a difference. Try one more time. Okay, and then you can kind of see that it's actually changed at this point. So that's a little quick overview of CRUD. There is one thing I will show you that I'm going to regret showing you, and you're not allowed to use this for your assessment, but there is a entire command called scaffold. But if I see you do this and I can tell within a second if you've done it, I will immediately fail your assessment. Like, it's just what it is. There is, but I just want to let you know that this exists. There's something called scaffold. Scaffold. Which essentially allows you to generate an entire Rails app in one command. So I'm going to create, we'll do Rails generate. We're going to, actually I think I can cd into pet shelters. And I can actually generate a high score. And basically it builds out your entire Rails app in one go. So if I were to go to high scores, my migrations are pending. I need to run migrate. I have the ability to create a new one that's already done for me. Game Monopoly. Create high score. I can edit the same one. I can go back, see all of them, and I can also destroy them as well. So there is one command that will create an entire Rails app for you. That does not help you at all whatsoever. It's like saying like, it's like, so your job is like, you're going to apply to be the driver of somebody fancy in a stick shift car, and all you know how to drive is an automatic thing because all you practice is driving on an automatic car. You won't get the job because you don't know how to drive a stick shift. Like, even though those tools do exist, you're useless to the person who's actually, you need to drive around in a stick shift car because you don't know how to drive a stick shift car. That's what I would liken it to. But this does exist, and you can, like, the code is actually already written for you, so you can kind of take a look inside the controller, like, oh, like for the index I need to grab all of them. For the show I don't need to do anything, but there's this before action for set high score, and I have new and edit and create, and all of the code is more or less here. I can tell within seconds if you run this command because you have to delete a lot of stuff in order for me not to find everything.
Challenge It would probably be harder to do and take you longer to sit through and delete everything than it would to just build the routes yourself.
Yeah. So CRUD apps are one of those things where don't do nested if you don't have singles. Don't do authentication unless you have singles. So just do the single CRUD for right now. The first time I wrote a CRUD app, it took me like 7 hours. And I did the same thing every single day. Just choose a new noun. It's the same thing over and over. And by the end, I was able to finish in like 15 or 20 minutes. So I go from 7 hours down to 1. You have to build one probably every single day.
Was that like without looking, you mean?
Oh, you can look. That's fine, but it still takes me like 7 hours to build one. If you can do it faster than 7 hours, you're better than me.
I just look at the guide.
No.
That's fine.
Are we talking about like are you talking about like real life CRUD apps?
So everything is a CRUD app. Like everything at the basis of it is a CRUD app.
Right, but like something like more extensive than like what we're doing.
Right now, I just want you to do like one single thing, which is just like create a CRUD app that is like coffee roasts, like, oh, this particular coffee roast is a medium body. It's like coarse grind or something like that. And you can create, read, update, and destroy coffee roasts. Then another one is like, I like dogs, so I can create, read, update, and destroy dogs. I like cars. Every car has a make, model, VIN number, and color. You know, so you can create, read, update, and destroy those cards as well.
So what about the nested though? You're saying don't worry about that?
If you don't have singles, you don't have nested.
So I think I get the singles one.
So can you build me an app before in the next hour?
If I really tried.
Nested. Let's go over nested tomorrow.